I'm so excited I got my e-ballot. Let me just quickly log in. Look at all the languages available. I'll just go for English. Since I'm abroad in Norway at the moment, I gotta cast my vote abroad. Due to intense interest in US politics and this election in particular, I thought I'd share my vote with you. I'm not going to spend too much time on the presidential vote. Plenty of people talk about it already. Most of you are already decided, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time explaining the California propositions instead. We are one of 23 states where citizens can petition to place a referendum on the ballot, and California's got 12 of these this year. Some of you may remember that in 2016, I voted for a sponge to clean up America and to make America really great again. But this time, I'm not going to do that. And that's because I later learned that if your write-in candidate is not qualified, then your vote is simply not counted. It is counted as an invalid, ineligible vote. And I don't want that. I actually want to send a message. So I'm going for the next best option. Libertarian candidate Jo Jorgensen, or in Danish, they would say Jo Jørgensen. She's pro-free trade, pro-deregulation, pro-demilitarization, anti-war, anti-war on drugs. All around, I like her. But I'm just going to address your questions right now. Why don't I vote for one of the two major candidates? The answer is because I don't like either of them. Do I believe one is better than the other? Yes. Why not vote for that candidate? Because I want to have truly great candidates on the ballot. And I think if we perpetuate this by voting for the lesser of two evils, we are not going to get great candidates on the ballot. Am I giving my vote to Trump? No. I vote in California, so Biden will win anyways. If I were to live in a swing state, would I still vote the same way? Yes. It is incredibly, incredibly rare that your vote would change the outcome of the election. It's more likely you'll win the lottery and get eaten by a shark and get hit by lightning before your vote actually matters. It's really only happened twice in US history that a third-party candidate has changed the outcome of the election. And that was most recently in 2000 when Ralph Nader voters caused Florida to swing from Al Gore to George Bush. And in 1884 when Prohibitionist candidate John St. John caused New York to swing from Republican James Blaine to Democrat Grover Cleveland. So don't worry, you're not likely to spoil the election. But am I wasting my vote then? No, you're never wasting your vote. The only vote you waste is one you don't believe in. Check my Medium post from a few months ago. I went into great detail about why you should vote your conscience. Now that I cast my presidential vote, let's move on. I'm not voting for any local candidates. I've been away for many years now. I haven't done my research, so I don't think it'd be very honest for me to vote for these local candidates. All right, just keep skipping ahead. All right, and this is where the propositions begin. Prop 14 would issue $5.5 billion in debt for stem cell research. I strongly believe in medical research, especially basic research that leads to improvement of human life. And so we launched the California Institute of Regenerative Medicine with $3 billion of funding in 2004 by another ballot initiative. And California has been at the forefront of stem cell research. But I do think it's now time for the Institute to secure additional external sources of funding. And we cannot burden California taxpayers with an additional $5.5 billion in debt for the next few decades. So the supporters of this ballot include Democrats and quite a bit of big donors, while on the other side are Republicans and most of the media. I vote no. Prop 15 would tax commercial real estate at market value rather than at purchase price. So this would likely result in increased taxes since most real estate prices go up after purchase. But I think this is a bit unfair because the owners of these properties have not realized their gains. So it wouldn't really be fair to collect taxes on this hypothetically higher market value. If we want to raise property taxes instead, maybe it's a bit fairer to wait until the transaction occurs instead and then have a little bit of a windfall there. So I'm siding with the Republicans again and opposing, so I vote no. Prop 16 would allow affirmative action in public employment and education. So that means applicants from an underrepresented race, sex, or national origin could be given a leg up. So many minorities, like Blacks and Hispanics and Native Americans, would likely see a boost, while Asians would most likely be hurt by such policies. So supporters of this includes Democrats, the media, and actually quite a lot of money. And opponents include Republicans and certain Asian groups as well. I vote yes on this proposition. Prop 17 would allow parolees the right to vote. So currently 19 states in the US already allow that, and I believe that everybody should have the right to vote, unconditionally. So on this, Democrats are in support, Republicans oppose, and I vote yes. Prop 18 would allow 17-year-olds to vote in primaries as long as they will be 18 by the next general election. Currently, 18 states in the US already allow this, and I vote yes as well. Prop 19 involves the transfer of tax assessments for properties. So a yes vote would allow you to transfer your primary home's tax assessment anywhere in the state, including to a home of higher value. It also increases the number of times you can transfer. However, it would require second homes to be reassessed. No vote keeps things as is, which means you can only transfer your tax assessment within the county to a home of equal or lower value, and you can do it only once. So the supporters include Democrats as well as big money from realtors. Opponents include Republicans and a lot of the media. I'm not voting on this one. I don't understand it well enough. Prop 20 would upgrade the severity of several crimes. So certain theft and fraud crimes would be upgraded from misdemeanors to potential felonies. It would restrict parole for certain violent crimes, and DNA collection would be expanded. Republicans support, Democrats oppose, and I vote no. Prop 21 would expand rent control to include homes built more than 15 years ago. Currently, state law exempts all construction after 1995, as well as all homes with distinct titles like single-family homes. So the supporters include most Democrats, except Gavin Newsom. He, as well as most Republicans, and most of the media and large donors oppose this measure, and I vote no. I'm in general quite opposed to rent control because it does not address the structural issues of housing shortage. It does not encourage us to build more housing, which is really what we need. Simple supply and demand says we need to build more. Rent control helps existing tenants and the small number of us that are able to essentially win the lottery to get into a rent-controlled unit. But economic studies show that rent control leads to misallocation of homes. For example, like empty nesters might not want to move out of their rent-controlled apartments even though they don't need that place anymore. And rent control also leads to decay in the housing stock as owners are a bit less incentivized to pay for maintenance. So that's why I vote no. Prop 22 is the big one this year. It is hot in California and throughout the country because it's going to really redefine the way that apps like Uber would work. Prop 22 defines Uber drivers, Grubhub riders, and other app-based workers as independent contractors. This is really the hottest proposition right now. Last year, Assembly Bill number 5 essentially eliminated freelance work in California. So that meant journalists, writers, photographers suddenly found themselves out of work until this past September, when the legislature carved out an exemption for them. And this proposition would further exempt app-based drivers and couriers, so Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, Postmate delivery people, and so on and so forth. Supporters include the Republican Party, as well as a lot of the tech industry, and opponents include unions and Democrats, and I vote yes. Now, I recognize the concern from employment advocates that these drivers are not receiving employment benefits, long-term contracts, or pension benefits, etc. But AB 5 was sloppily written last year, and a blanket ban does not help anybody. It does not help the workers or the customers. We want drivers to have the right to have flexible, independent work. The unions are mad that the tech companies are going around the inflexible, outdated rules that they wrote ages ago. The legislatures need to really go back to the drawing board and come up with worker protections that make sense in today's world and not just pander to the unions. I'm not entirely opposed to some form of changes to the worker regime in the app-based freelancer world. But AB 5 is not the way to do it. Prop 23 would require dialysis clinics to have a doctor on site. Democrats and unions support this. Republicans and the California Medical Association are opposed, and I vote no. Now, this measure sounds like it's for the safety of dialysis patients. But really, there is no evidence that a doctor is really necessary. It's a routine procedure. Patients get dialysis several times per week, and this will increase costs for no reason. Doctors do not actually support this measure either. In reality, this is a labor dispute. SCIU has been having trouble unionizing dialysis clinics. So they're just trying to figure out a way to make them waste money fighting a useless proposition. This is something that should have been dealt by regulators and health professionals, not regular voters who really don't understand the kidney dialysis market and just how medical safety works. This was the most expensive ballot measure in 2018. And it failed. It is the second most expensive ballot measure this year. It's back on the ballot. The doctors still say no, and I agree in voting no. Prop 24 would establish the California Privacy Protection Agency. The ACLU, which is a reliable guardian of our civil liberties, is opposed to this measure. The EFF, which is probably the best guardian of our digital rights, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, has not taken a side on this. They call it, and I quote, a mixed bag of partial steps backwards and forwards. So I vote no. And the last proposition on the ballot, Prop 25, would replace cash bail with a risk-based assessment. In California, like most states, suspects pay cash to be released from jail while they wait for trial. This is really unfair. I mean, it's tremendously discriminatory against the poor. And so those who are unable to pay are stuck in jail waiting, or they're at the mercy of bail bondsmen who just don't offer the best terms. I mean, you might be very familiar with them. And these suspects, they're accused, not convicted, all right? Just accused of small crimes, and they could be stuck in jail for months, lose their jobs, lose their families, or lose their lives, basically. So the supporters of this proposition includes most Democrats, as well as some very prominent donors, Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer, Netflix founder's wife Patty Quinlan, hedge fund manager Tom Steyer. They've written large checks to put this through. Republicans and law enforcement groups are opposed. But I am strongly in support. Bail hurts minorities, blacks disproportionately, and if we learned anything from the protests this summer, it is to vote yes. The final thing on the ballot is a measure for a local county, Measure X, which increases sales tax by 0.5% for local public services. And I vote no on this. I am in general opposed to higher sales taxes because of its regressive nature. I do understand that we need to improve public services. I believe other forms of taxation are better than sales taxes. Sales taxes are regressive. Sales taxes tax the poor more than they tax the rich. And that is not the right way to fund things. Alrighty, these are my votes. So that's it, everybody. This is my first time voting online, and I did not even know that there was an option to return the ballot by fax. Awesome. I can save on a postage stamp. Let's see how to do it. Great. I'm going to print this out and fax in my vote. It's going to be absolutely crazy this week. I can't wait to see the results. Thanks for joining me. See you later.